Hello! It's a gorgeous day here in Columbus, Ohio, and I am ecstatic to talk with you all about The Black Prism by Brent, the first book in the Lightbringer series. Now, I was asked by Orbit Books, the publishing company, to be a part of a reread of the Lightbringer series in anticipation of the final book in the Lightbringer series being released in October, The Burning White. Links down below for Lightbringer-y things, and follow me on Twitter, all of that. It was a blast doing the reread. I will be passing on the mantle to another content creator on Twitter for them to continue on the reread, and so on and so forth. I also do want to make sure that you know I am not changing my review or opinion on the Lightbringer in any way, shape, or form, or the Black Prism, due to the fact that Orbit Books has asked me to do this. In no way did they ask me to spin my review to be extra positive. I have just been very positive about Lightbringer since I first read it. And in addition to that, I have also met Brent very briefly. We were on a panel together at JordanCon, and I think we exchanged maybe 10 words afterward. But again, this will have no impact on my review of this book because, you know, I like having credibility as a reviewer, and it's important because it's how I'm able to grow on this platform. I'm pretty sure none of you would subscribe if you thought I was willing to change my opinion for some kind of deal. That is not the case. But let's go ahead and dive into the review because, man, this is a book I needed to review again. Because apparently I hurt myself somehow before recording it. I don't remember how, but I did. And I didn't have a pop filter, so all you could hear was every time I spoke. But now, with better equipment, more experience, we will be doing a re-review along with Orbit Books of The Black Prism. So The Black Prism is about a religious figurehead, a superhero to these people who takes care of the 7 satrapies. He is a god to these people, above it all, and he works for justice, putting down rebellions, and oh no, it's an absolute authority situation. Those are never good in fantasy. Now, there's an interesting dynamic here where the person we are following, our protagonist, is the head of an organization that, keeping it spoiler-free, becomes central to the conflict that the series develops. And no, it's not as stereotypical and cliche as you're thinking with what I just said. And that's one of my favorite things that really stuck out to me about Lightbringer going through it again. This is a story where just because an organization may have problems doesn't mean everyone involved is part of the problem. There are humans with goals and agency to achieve them throughout. I don't think there is a single character here that Brent forgot to give a good motivation and the actual drive to try and achieve it, which is incredibly refreshing to read. We have a diverse cast of characters, which is a plus in my book, and ranging character types and tropes. Some of them do walk some typical fantasy lines, while we also see some very new and interesting takes on some of the old classics. And my first time through, Gavin was without a doubt my favorite character. Again, I'm not going to get into spoilers, but he is the god type figure I mentioned earlier. But here on a reread, it was actually Kip I found myself most fascinated by. Maybe that's because I now know where his character is developing, how he grows, his true end game so far in the series. But going back to his origins and seeing where he came from and seeing the little nuggets of what he is to become be there was really brilliant, and I actually appreciate how much small little foreshadowing pieces there are upon a reread of this series. And this brings me to addressing probably the most common complaint leveled against Lightbringer, and that is there are too many graphic character descriptions, and one character in particular has them kind of just repeated on him again and again and again and again. And while I actually do agree that this one character is described physically again and again too many times, but if you just keep in mind that this is an insecurity of the actual character, and Brent is kind of, I think, just trying to make it so that every time the character feels this insecurity riling up, they are self-conscious about themselves because of it, the reader gets a reiteration, it becomes a little more understandable. Though I will agree, you really get the description by the end of it. So I've talked a little bit about initiating things and characters, but let's move on to the real fantastical elements here. The Black Prism introduces a magic system that on my first read I found mildly confusing until I think the end of the first book going into the second book, but coming in with the knowledge that I have now of finishing the series up until its current releases, it actually becomes much more easy to get right into and understand what is happening. And I think that's a common thing I've heard people getting into Lightbringer the first time say, that not everything is explained quite as clearly as they are used to. So those of you in my comment section who are constantly saying how Robert Jordan's over-explanation and re-explanation of the magic system drives you nuts, maybe Lightbringer's your way to go, because it is not spoon-fed to you. You really need to kind of draw connections on your own. But once it is all laid out there, it's certainly clear and easy to understand. This is almost a Brandon Sanderson-esque magic system in terms of technicality to it, and easy to understand cause and effect throughout. And for those of you wondering, I think I would go with blue, Luxon, or orange, although it changes quite often. I really enjoy this magic system, not only because it is creative and based in some kind of real scientific aspects, which is always a bonus in my mind, but it helps build the world and the combat that is happening here so effectively. I think Brent Weeks' strongest asset as an author is actually his ability to write combat. It is so immersive, and the stakes always feel so high every time there is any form of combat going on, unless it is very much so not meant to. And Brent Weeks plays with that dynamic very artfully. If a person is way stronger than those around them and has no fear, that cocksure attitude bleeds through the pages to the reader, and you just believe them. You know, okay, he's the best of the best. But once we get in the shoes of some more inexperienced up-and-coming characters, it becomes way more interesting to see how they evolve as fighters. Whether they're tanks, for those of you who read it, you know why I like tanks in Lightbringer, or the incredibly creative, fast attacker we see in Karis Whiteoak. I just, from beginning to end, don't think there is a poorly handled scene of tension or combat with any of the characters, but this does lead me on to villains. There are different types of villains in Lightbringer, which I think a lot of people will enjoy. We have your typical big baddie leading an army for a big fight, but there are also closer to home, without getting into spoilers, more just turmoil causing on the home front, I guess is the way for me to put it, villains for us to connect with, engage with. One of the best love to hate him characters in modern fantasy, in my opinion, exists within Lightbringer. And as with every fantasy story, the villain can really make or break it. Well, I don't think Lightbringer needed a great villain to totally make it, because the foundation is already there for a wonderful story. But the villain certainly seals the deal for me, at least one of them. The final thing I wanted to touch on for the Black Prism is brotherhood or camaraderie, however you want to put it. There is a group in this book called the Blackguard, and I personally deeply love when an author puts the time and effort in to really build a dynamic within a group, establish relationships that differ, and have varied, nuanced things and motivations and how people view and act around each other. This is done to masterful effect here. There are the obvious parallels drawn to the Black Company and Bridge 4, and I personally kind of think it's the highlight of all of Lightbringer, following their growth and development as a group, learning not only how to understand these individual characters, but how they view and feel about each other. So if, like me, you are very big on relationships, dynamics, brotherhood, that kind of band of brothers, war, bonding, feature to a series, the Black Prism and beyond within Lightbringer are going to be one of your best bets to really get you hooked in. So if you want to know my recommendation, should you go read the Black Prism? Without question, I believe so. It is a remarkable kickoff to a rock-solid series, and Lightbringer as a whole has been in my top 10 fantasy series of all time since I read it. I would not have agreed to do this reread with Orbit Books and again recommend it to you if that opinion had changed. I actually am a person of conviction. Can you believe it? I do plan on doing a Why You Should Read Lightbringer in the future, where I'll actually be doing a kind of deeper dive into the whole series, including the magic system, villains. It'll be mildly spoilery, but only just so I can pitch people on the series better. This has been remarkably spoiler-free because some people keep yelling at me that even setup things in books can be spoilers, which, okay, fine, you babies. And if I'm able to get enough information on the guy, I do plan on doing an author deep dive on Brent Weeks as well. Anyway, if you have not already, please like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments down below if you have read The Black Prism, what you thought of it as a book, and hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. Have a good one, y'all. Peace. Quick side note, a complete coincidence, Murphy Napier is also putting up her review of Lightbringer today. So while I am doing a re-review, she is doing a first-time impression review. I will link to hers in the description down below. Go check it out, support her if you want to check out another awesome booktube type person. And let's go ahead and jump back into my re-review. Special shout out to my latest high-tier Patreon. Twitch Avery, good name. Do you hear them doing yard work in the background. I'm really sorry about that. I didn't want that to be there, but I've been waiting about 40 minutes for them to stop, and I gotta get this video done. So unfortunately, you can hear them. Yep, okay, that was almost like to emphasize my point. Doing their yard work. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.